the next event we think we should point out for them? And then we'll pass to Pat.
There is a long list of them. The one that I just want to highlight right now that Patty is working on is the Veterans Day Parade here in Austin, Texas. But I'm not going to steal any of her thunder. And then I'm excited that next Monday on October 13th will be our first newsletter. If you don't see your activity listed in there, it's only because I haven't gotten a chance to put it into our database. But keep pecking away, keep tapping, because we want this to be a one-stop shop for so many things that complement the efforts you all are already doing. So on that note, pass over to Patty. Patty, from Combined Arms and so many other hats that you wear.
And leading to win.
Yes.
Knock off, there we go. Well, welcome everybody. Thanks for showing up tonight and showing up for yourselves. And so, as Joseph just mentioned, we have our Austin Veterans Day Parade, and it's actually on Veterans Day. I think some of you might have been tracking it, that it was scheduled for the 8th. That has shifted, as I just recently learned myself. So now it's actually on Veterans Day Parade. We start at 9, we go through 12, end up at the steps of the Capitol, and we will be having a resource fair, small, but at least offering some key resources for anybody that's military connected. So I have a flyer right here on my table, that QR code. If anybody has an organization, a group that wants to do the float and participate, there's always been a fee. This will be my first one, so I don't know about you all, but this will be my first one. And so that QR code takes you to the registration page. If you have an organization that wants to have a booth, please see me, because I will be your point of contact for that. And then I'm going to pivot to Texas Veterans Network. How many of you are all connected to the military? If you haven't signed up to have a profile on our network, and you can download our app so that you can constantly stay connected to any and all of the resources, let me know. I can chat with you. There's some information there for you, or we can take care of that later today. All right, any questions? All right, well, thank you. Back to you.
Reminder, don't leave your benefit dollars on the table. Patty will help you make sure that you max out all of the opportunities available to you. And with that in mind, maximizing benefits, Brandon, would you please join us, because we want to maximize our time with you, sir. And I'm going to call Andrew and Jeremy on up. We're excited to hear from Brandon on his leadership experience, both in and out of the service. There we go.
Yeah. You want to start, or me start?
Please.
Well, hey everyone, welcome back to well, we missed last month, but we're back in October. So the military connected NCM3, and this is the fireside chat. This is my friend Brandon Cates. He is CEO of, you have to say the name of the company because I screw it up every time. Ametrine is a company here in Round Rock. You're a former Special Forces.
Special operations.
You're an operator.
No.
Ranger Regiment, okay.
Thank you guys, I don't expect them.
Yeah.
That's slow.
We'll draw.
No, that's the Marines. That's different. Yeah, they're step brothers. And then, so we're back, and you're our guest of honor.
Thank you, thanks for having me.
Yeah.
I don't want to see the fire.
Yeah, it's
In our hearts.
yeah, it's in our hearts. So Brandon and I met through. Okay, remember, I don't know if everyone remembers Jim Orbach, the very first episode. I met Jim at Hill Country Christian School. I met Brandon there. Our sons played football together. They were in the same grade for about, I don't know, 4 years, 5 years?
Something like that.
Yeah, and your wife taught there. She does? Okay.
And my daughter.
And we just casually knew each other. And I worked at a company called Icon here in town, and we were getting ready for a meeting with General Daly when we were demonstrating our printer. And I'm sitting there nervous, trying to get it all ready to go, trying to make sure it works. I turned around and said, hey, I know that guy. So I texted my wife. And I was like, what's his name? Brandon Cates? Is that who it is? So walked in and said, hey man, what are you doing here? So that's how I found out that you're a CEO in the startup world. So how did you get here? How did you get to the startup world? How did you get to
that meeting, or
well, that meeting, like more general, more, how did you get to be a CEO?
So I think I stumbled into the CEO role. social network in a lot of ways. But I guess to go back, I was one of the first graduates of an entrepreneurship program at Florida State University. I was in the inaugural class, I guess. They never had a program. I think a lot of those programs are pretty common now in a lot of universities. But my father had started a business when I was growing up, and I saw the struggles he went through trying to make things happen, and just really enjoyed learning from him. And so when I saw the entrepreneurship program at Florida State, I signed up. So little did I know that, you know, my military experience would also feed into kind of an entrepreneurial startup culture mindset, I guess. But I always wanted to run a business. So I figured I'd eventually go back and help my dad run his business. That didn't work out itself, but spent 7.5 years in the military on active duty, and then after that joined a very large company, Dell. But I was in a startup inside of Dell, which is kind of neat.
What was that like? Well, compared to a startup, like a traditional startup, right? Like a tech startup versus a startup within a company.
So
like completely.
yeah, Dell's culture is an interesting one. I'm sure there's some Dell alumni maybe in the room, or everybody knows a Dell alumni in this town. It's fast-paced culture. It's a very driven culture by results, and it's a tough culture in the sense of there's not a whole lot of empathy in management ranks. So it's results driven, and maybe at the individual level a lot of empathy, but the organization as itself is a large machine and has a mission to accomplish. And so, but being inside of a startup really allows for a lot of flexibility. So you have all the comfort and benefit of a large company with the security, resources,
right.
But a startup mentality where you can kind of fix, go fast, break things, fix them, and move.
So pivot and all the.
And I was the leader of our organization was a ranger. Had been served in the same Ranger Regiment that I was in, a different battalion, and so he had a leadership culture that he embedded into the team that was admirable and something we want to follow.
But that actually kind of reminds me of what we were talking earlier. You talked about your military science professor at Florida State was a ranger.
Sure.
And then you had another ranger. So and they had influenced your career. How has mentors like that in your life influenced your career as you made your way from the military to the world and your career?
I think it's probably one of the most critical aspects of my career. And we have a former professor of military science in the audience here. And I think, I don't know how he would approach it, but I think a professor of military science is one of the most influential at the most critical time in a young cadet or future officer's life. In our case, I look at the statistics of the graduating class that I was in. Our colonel was a Special Forces Green Beret, and out of the 12 that were commissioned, 8 eventually served in some capacity, 8 or 9, in the special operations community in Afghanistan in 2001, 2002, 2003. So I think it all goes back to our professor of military science and the culture of service, elite, excel, go the extra mile kind of attitude that he had. So that's where it started for me, and then I got reinforced in multiple places in my career, from amazing company commanders, amazing battalion commanders. I got the chance to work for, at the time, Lieutenant Colonel Tony Thomas, who became the 4-star general and the commander of all the special operations command eventually, and he just set the standard for leadership as well.
How did those mentors actually, were those the same mentors? How do they affect you now in your civilian side? Do you have a mentor now that helps you in your career?
That's a great question. I do actually. I have a CEO mentor. I work in a unique space where I have an Israeli-American company that I'm leading.
Okay.
And that cultural difference between Israeli companies and American companies is something that's very delicate and very tricky. Right? A lot of times as we get new hires in, Americans who've never worked with Israelis, I'll give them a warning. I'll say, like, look, at some point in time, we're going to be in a room with our engineering team from Israel, and they're going to go what I call Hebrew secure. They're not doing it because they're trying to pass secrets or anything like that. But when they communicate, you're going to get a little nervous. Like, you might think somebody's going to pull out a knife and stab each other. And they're just ordering lunch. Like, the language and it's common amongst a lot of the languages. It's aggressive. And so I have a CEO mentor who worked in an Israeli-American company, very successful and very large one, who kind of helps me in that space.
Okay. So I think that the cultural shift between the American versus
Yep,
Israeli.
absolutely.
I've had some similar experience. I worked for a German company, and they're ordering lunch
time for me to try something else. Was there something to help you make that transition? Was there a person?
Out of the service into Dell?
Well, so from Dell into like a small organization, a startup, your journey towards entrepreneurship. I don't necessarily mean to now let's say this is the size of the company. This is the size of the company. That's all I know.
Yeah, that's a good question. So for me, and I think a lot of folks who serve, whether you leave early on in your service after 3 or 4 years, or whether you leave after 35 years, you go through, I wouldn't call it an identity crisis in like a dramatic sense, but you do go through a bit of an emotional event where you realize that the thing you're doing today for whatever company is not nearly as important as what you used to do for your nation. And unless you get into like the ministry or a police officer or firefighter, it's pretty hard to find a direct line that sense of higher purpose. So I went through that probably around the 2-year mark at Dell, and started reaching out to some of the recruiters that I talked to that pull junior military officers in places. And I went to them saying, hey, look, I want something with great purpose. Unfortunately, they never actually found that for me. It was through my social network. Yeah, it's a little plug for their failure. No, they did a great job trying. But at the end of the day, it was my social network. The guy I served with in the Ranger Regiment had started a company working with DARPA, and he was looking for folks he could trust. And so I joined him about 3 years after I left the service, and we started a company and grew it up for about 6 years, and then sold it to another consulting. We were doing consulting in a lot of different spaces. We were teaching classes at West Point. We were doing intelligence work in the DC area, and then we were also doing technology insertion and integration for large companies as well as end users who didn't really understand how to take new technology to the next level. So an end user's got a problem, we got a company who's got a solution, but they don't necessarily always talk to each other, and so we inserted ourselves as consultants in the middle and bridge that gap.
Okay, so then similar to that, right? Because you're no longer with that company.
Right.
So again, what was the bridge between there and where you are now?
So, working in that company, we spent a lot of time in Israel. As many of you probably know, Israel spends a lot of time developing new technologies for counterterrorism and military purposes. And the defense tech industry is pretty amazing. So, I think my first trip to Israel was around 2009 to help develop a new weapon system for the Green Berets. And when you're working in Israel, for lack of a better term, trust is probably the most important currency over there. Do they trust you to live up to their expectations for their product, for their brand, for the companies they're working with, and trust is that most valuable currency there. Worked in Israel with a friend of mine here who's sitting in the audience as well for probably 5 or 6 years. To fast forward to 2017, existing company was bought by a venture capital fund, and that owner said, I'm going to America and I'm going to go find American special operations business folks to lead this company. And so they reached out to their Israeli network in America, and myself and a couple other folks were on the short list of folks that they wanted to talk to. I guess it goes back to that social network connection.
I'm seeing a trend here. It's everything. Every time you move, every time you change something, it's because of networks you create. Right through veteran interactions, they've got opportunities to get positions. And here you are now. So we'll move along where you are now.
So Ametrine is the industry leader in signature management technology. So we make, depending upon what the audience is or the group, I'll say we make people disappear.
So to be clear, it's not
here.
like pen signature, not like rubber stamp.
Correct. The invisibility cloak that Harry Potter had in the movies is basically what we do. Not basically, it's exactly. We make soldiers, warfighters disappear so that they can do their job and come back alive.
And your position now.
CEO.
Okay, and so you said you stumbled into that role. Again, basically, kind of through your network.
Yeah. I wasn't seeking a CEO role, is what I'd say. They came to myself, Greg Glass, who's here in the back, and one other guy named Don Bentley, who's still lives in this area, and they were looking for leaders to run their company. I honestly thought I was interviewing for consulting. I thought, well, this would be a nice consulting job. At first, I didn't think that the science that he was describing would actually work. So I was actually a little bit off the hook. He was a snake oil selling unless I test this out, I'm not gonna do it.
I think that was fantastic.
They did. I think they did. Okay. And it worked, obviously.
Okay, so it seems like through the connections, you've made through the different positions, continue to grow and expand and then you had the kind of the importance of, I'll say, cultural nuance, right? Understanding the room, reading people to facilitate further transactions, right? That seems like a pretty common theme throughout your careers.
Yeah, I think in our company, there's a term called polygon. And I don't know if it's Arabic or Hebrew, honestly. I think it probably crosses over. Polygon is chaos. If you're ever watching an Israeli show called Falcon, chaos is a common theme in startups. In Israeli startups, I'd say chaos is at an even more intense level. And I think I'm the peacemaker in the company. I think that's my main role. We have a chief polygon officer too. My job is to keep him in check.
Okay, so that's interesting right there. So the idea of chaos, absolutely, I feel like there's chaos in everything, especially kind of the startup world and entrepreneurship, right? Because you got to figure it all out yourself. Now you're saying you're the peacemaker, right? Which to me sounds like leadership. Am I wrong on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's exactly what it is. It's making the peace between different departments and divisions, right? Should always be healthy tension. We use a term in our company called BD Lives. And at first I took offense at that, as if, and I consider myself a very business development focused CEO. I took offense at the term because I thought that was like a character flaw, BD Lives. And it's not that at all. That wasn't the term in its intent. It was that as you're selling the company, you're selling that we can go conquer all these things and do all these things for the customer. And then engineering and production have to live up to that promise that you made as a business development person. And so the engineering and production teams are all like, well, the BD team's lying to you. I can't do that in 2 weeks. It's going to take me 4 weeks to do that. And so there should be a healthy tension of us trying to drive, because again, the BD folks on our team especially are all veterans, and they're working with and training guys who are still carrying those children, and they want them to have the best technology as fast as possible. And so of course they're going to commit to aggressive timelines. And so there's that healthy tension which causes sometimes chaos.
Sure.
And then the leader, not just me, but have to kind of wade into that chaos and create some clarity and some purpose.
Yeah, so I mean, it sounds like there's quite a bit of clarity and to support that healthy tension, right? So communicating, the intent of the organization to move it forward between these two sometimes opposing business units, if you will. So how important is that? How can you communicate across those two different functions to get them in line with kind of where you're going, where you want the business to go?
I don't think it's a cliche, but it's been said so many times. As a leader, you are going to get so tired of saying the same thing over and over. And you read that in any leadership book, and you really do. I thought it was kind of stupid. Well, people get it the first couple times. We're all talking English. We're all using the same lexicon, and they're going to get it when I explain to them. No, you have to explain things a dozen times, and then maybe 2 dozen more. And the senior leaders that work with you day in and day out are going to get tired of you saying it. So you have to guard yourself against their resistance to hearing you say the exact same thing over and over again.
Yep.
But you do. You have to do it. You just have to button it up and just keep saying it. Whatever that is, whatever that vision statement is, whatever the mission statement is, your values, just that constantly reporting.
Okay, and so now let's take that back to kind of the startup world and maybe more singular focus, right? And small, it doesn't have engineers, it doesn't have a whole business development team yet. So it's you and yourself, then you and 2 people, then you and 4 people. So I think a lot of issues arise when it goes from yourself and 5 people to yourself and 20 people. They become your leaders, right? Because then you're going from 20 to 60, right? So as veterans with exposure and leadership skills, exposure to leaders and leadership skills, and now having our own businesses, like, how do you scale intent?
military does a great job with commanders of intent, and I don't think the business world quite gets that completely.
Okay.
You know, I think, I'm sure somebody else has said this, and maybe I'm, jacking it up a little bit, but I think the reason we won World War II is because of commanders of intent. You had little groups of paratroopers get dropped all over, and just specifically to Normandy. But like, Normandy invasion was a success because of commanders of intent. Little groups of paratroopers get dropped all over the place, far away from their commander, far away, just little privates grabbing a general, like the fireman, four-man fire team with a general, a private, a sergeant, and they know that their job is to go get that building or that bridge or whatever. But it's commanders of intent. I'm sure that's a little bit of an extrapolation too far, but I think the business world doesn't quite get that, even though there are a lot of veterans out there in startups. Commander of intent is a very powerful tool. Cyber perks and end state and all the components of it. I think, again, you have to keep driving it home. And you mentioned going from one person to 2 to 4 to 10 being a leader of leaders. I think the threat of distractions just extrapolates into yet nothing. And so going back to that focus and being kind of the redundant repeater of the vision of where you're headed. You can pivot, of course, that's always an option and those things, but pivoting is very different than a distraction that takes you away. Pivot is a deliberate decision to change your business strategy. A distraction is you just took your eyes off the ball and, squirrel.
Yeah.
Whatever. And that, I will say that happens to us all the time. Like, distractions are a constant thing we fight every day.
How do you distinguish between distraction and a pivot? Because sometimes I would say that a pivot occurs because of a distraction, then it might not have really been a pivot. I mean, how do you determine the difference?
It's a great question. I don't know that I'm an authority on it. We've not.
How have you?
I think because for us, it always comes back to the end user, customer. In our case, somebody carries a gun for a living and goes in a high threat environment. If the need from that person is loud enough and there are enough of them, we're a very niche company in a lot of ways. We will serve a very small organization that only has one thing that they need from us, and we will do it happily. But the balance of that versus a large organization like the entire Marine Corps or the entire Army, that's what drives it for us. Is it a distraction or is it a true pivot and we should go focus on this for one?
The other thing that I was want to follow up on what Andrew was talking about, and what you're talking about is like leadership and being that peacemaker. It seems a lot of like empathy has to occur for you on both sides, right? For the engineer, for the team. I mean, you're kind of explain like how you manage that and navigate empathy between two very different departments.
Very different departments, and in my case, very different cultures too.
Okay.
Empathy is different across the world, right? Germans have different empathy than French, and I'm not making any statements about that. It's different. And traditionally, you think about like a business development organization full of fire breathers, type A personalities. Their level of empathy may be pre-wired a little differently than an engineer who doesn't want to be talked to, wants to sit in their own room and like just do the work. So you're absolutely right. Like you have to be a slightly different person to different communities. I know that sounds a little fake potentially.
No, actually, that sounds. I know what you're talking about personally. So like when you walk in the room with engineers, you gotta talk like an engineer, so make sure that they understand. But then you walk in the room with sales guys, you gotta talk like a sales guy and make sure they understand. But then the fun part is when you go talk to those architects over there, you gotta like take both of those things and interpolate it back to what they need to hear.
I think the other, probably the most important part of that is knowing who you are. Are you more of the BD person? So if you ask me which group to go stand amongst, I would go stand amongst the BD folks. That's why I go stand with the other group. So knowing that that's the culture I come from, the way I'm pre-wired, when I go in to talk to engineers or a cross-functional team, I just need to keep that in check a little bit, right? Because my aggressiveness, I'm just gonna tell you how it's done. Like, this is the answer, just listen to me. Like, that's not good.
Yeah.
Even though in a business development environment, it might be.
You got any more?
I got one last one.
One last one, okay, cool.
I promise, yeah. I could ask 100 more questions, but I'll leave it to the last one before we get to the audience. So, kind of carry with us, nuance, talking to startup, right, you got a pickup team. Just like that little group of paratroopers, right? You have yourself, who's got the great idea, and maybe an engineer actually is trained in engineering and does engineering because I have an idea, I need a guy that does this, a gal that does this. So you pick up that person, and then you need somebody else to run marketing. So, well, I got a buddy of mine who needs a job, and he was an anthropologist degree. But he's got a cute face, so come on, man. Right? So now you've got some people all work together, all have different backgrounds, and yet you're a very small group still, potentially, right? So is there any difference, I guess, between leading small groups of different types of people and then leading a big group of different types of people? Follow my train of thought there.
I mean, I honestly think the military, with spans and layers, has done this really well for decades, if not centuries. You get an organization like McKinsey or Deloitte or something, they'll come in and spend weeks and months with you in a large company, and they'll come back to me and say, we need to refine your spans and layers. You know, the span of control of 3 to 5 people, any leader can lead, that kind of thing. Well, hey, that's what a fire team is, that's what squads, you know. And so, right, and so the model works. I think anytime you're going to, you should reevaluate that as you grow. We're in the midst of that right now. With some of our growth is a reorg happens. When you're in a startup and a scale up or whatever you want to call it, a young company, you're going to reorg all the time. It's going to feel like whiplash because you're adding folks to the team. You gotta reorg it. Yeah. But spans and layers and scope, span of control is a real thing. I know the CEO of NVIDIA, I believe, has like 81 direct reports or something like that. I don't understand. I don't understand how it works. Works for him.
Okay, so here's what I'm taking from you. Ruthless focus on the customer. Alright. Intent. Business leaders intent. Creative intent. Which pretty far. Networking actually does work.
It does, but I don't know that I was ever deliberate about it. Just to be clear, I do think like right.
Like it's a nice
meeting,
right?
right.
Like you don't know.
There's a style of networking that all of you have encountered maybe today, that feels very forced. And I would never advocate or recommend anybody.
But and I think that goes to my last one, which is being personable, kind, understanding nuance in your interaction with individuals.
I think all that goes back to the servant part that any veteran in this room, a lot of people who support veterans, I mean, they're all oriented towards serving someone, whatever that community is. The veterans community is serving our local cause. So if you come into a network opportunity and the idea of I want to help these folks who are in the room, that works itself out in the long run.
There we go. I think that's a perfect note to end on. All right, I think we'll turn over to the audience now for any questions.
Thank you, Andrew and Brandon. So I had the benefit of meeting Brandon through another organization where we're both of service on the Defense Innovation Task Force for the Round Rock Chamber. And Brandon and I have seen this in action, that you put your servant's heart to work. So thank you again for joining us. Love the conversation. I love the idea of scaling intent. I think that's a really, deep and nuanced conversation for entrepreneurs. And so I'd love to open it up to questions. If you have questions for, our guest Brandon, and also if you'd like to share a little bit about yourself, if you'd like to share, your name, your organization, and maybe something that you were struggling with, that you have taken away, maybe some insights from the conversation as well. So, yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Lauren. Perfect way to tell us what's on our mind. My name's Karina. I'm a 25-year Army veteran. And you said in the very beginning that to utilize your social network to reach out and figure out what you can do or where you can fill that gap. I was fortunate in the latter part of my career to work alongside a SOF, General Thomas, and some great leaders out there, but I was not obviously Special Forces. So now, as I'm looking to grow my national security-oriented business, you mentioned Israel. Israel Defense Forces has women. And so my question to you, or any of you, is that when you're in an environment, you're trying to win that contract or build that social network in a soft environment, what advice, like you probably know Lauren Wintberg Wiener, oh my God, multi-million-dollar business supported soft. General McChrystal was her mentor. So what is your advice to help women in that space do better, build that social network? Oh, and I forgot to mention I did counterterrorism ops, just saying.
That's awesome. Well, thank you for your service. Thank you for the question. I don't know that this is a specific answer to women the way you phrased it, but I'll try to cover my advice on working with soft in general. It has to start with best of breed. You have to be the best at what you're doing because they only choose best of breed. Whether it's a service you're providing, whether it's a product you're providing, whether it's training you're providing, whatever that is, that's what they do. They will accept risk. They will take a 70% solution that costs way more than they think it needs to cost eventually. Like the Marine Corps is never going to pay those prices, but they'll pay it with soft. But it has to be the best. It has to deliver real capability. And the real capability piece of it has to be something you're engaging with the end user. And so if you don't have end user buy-in, if you don't have the E7 in a green, in an SF team or the equivalent in NSW with the SEALs who's saying, I need your stuff. Because eventually the program manager who's writing the check and doing the contract action for you is going to call down and say, I need to go talk to the guy in the Special Forces group. You can call down there and that person answers the phone and says, I don't know your company. I never heard of you. Good luck. They'll never do it. So it's a grassroots campaign that has to start there. And then obviously, we always talk about like this Venn diagram. It's not just soft specific, but the Venn diagram of money, right? You have to have money from Congress. You have to have a contract vehicle, which, there's a lot of different ways to do that. And then you have to have end user buy-in and a desire from the user. If you haven't talked to all three of those buckets of people, you're not going to make it very good. You might get some credit card purchases, you might get some small contract actions and stuff like that. But as a woman, supporting soft and trying to get a service or a product in soft, again, my experience is it's all about best of breed. It has nothing to do whether you've ever served in soft or whether you are a woman, a man, or anything else. I want the best product to help my guys, accomplish their mission and come back alive. Sorry.
So I'll extrapolate that to general business entrepreneurship. So Andrew touched on this. Andrew said a relentless, ruthless dedication to your end user, to your customer. Who in here has spent the majority of their time as an entrepreneur trying to figure out the needs of their customer? Who is married to their customer? Mine is the Space Force, okay? Now, who has been told that that's marketing or that's market research and that you should be spending your time on the engineering or you should be spending your time, chasing X, Y, and Z? Who has experienced that tension that we talked about between BD and development in their own application in your business? Yeah. If you're an entrepreneur, you're going to be raising your hands. So, Karina, even though your question was specific, I'd say there are much broader applications. And Brandon, I think the points that you've made, we can all take and marinate on how we apply those in our daily lives. Other questions for Brandon or reflections that you're taking away from this conversation for your own business and journey? Yes, my friend.
So it's kind of like a stupid question. My name is Raj, by the way. I'm a little different. I'm actually a doctor, so it's not really in the realm of like probably what everyone's doing here, but I'm aiming to kind of create my own new business plan after I've kind of come to like a realization moment on like what I really want to do in my life. And I enjoy fitness, and I enjoy being outdoors, and I love traveling to other countries. And so my aim was actually to create a series of healthcare, holistic wellness, and fitness facilities in the airports globally. And to do that, I've been going through taking away like patient care time and time from like everything else, so that way I can actually go to like a variety of SMBR and events that are here with Austin Airport. When did you ever think about like the idea of like, hey, maybe I'm in over my head and I need to go into like an incubator, quote unquote, to seek guidance from people who can kind of guide me through the way of doing things? Or was it more like shut the F up and just like tie your shoes and just like do it? Like where there's a will, there's a way. Did did you ever feel like maybe you were in over your head if you didn't have experience? And like, how did you find out those kinds of resources without feeling like you were scared that it was never going to happen or was going to get, yeah.
So thank you for what you're getting ready to do. As a guy who spends a lot of my life in airports, I can't wait. Yeah, it's exciting. But as a medical professional, I'm actually suspicious whether you're actually listening to my day because I've gone through all those emotions you just described today. I feel like I'm over my head, in over my head. I need advice on this. I mean, it happens every day. That feeling, I don't think ever goes away. I think if you talk to, Jamie Dimon or some of these, they're going to tell you, maybe they wouldn't admit to like being in over their head all the time, but it happens. It's bound to. I struggle with communicating clear commander's intent, if you will, and also the vulnerability of leading a team of saying like, we're making shit up as we go along sometimes. And we don't, I mean, I was badge number 2 in our company. And so, like, we had no SOPs. We didn't know how to do payroll. We didn't know how to pay people, our suppliers. All those things you figure out at some point in time. And so, going back to the social network, I think, compared to when I started doing business in the defense space to today, the amount of resources that are out there for entrepreneurs and startups, and, unbelievable amount of resources. I honestly think it's probably hard to navigate all the different places to go get resources, all the different incubators that are out there. How do you find the right one for you and your niche? It's almost like resource overwhelming. But I think what I've found over the years, whether I was raising funds and talking to VCs, or looking for answers to kind of some of your questions, like how do I use, how do I run payroll? This community of folks, set aside the veteran community, which I think is extra special in the way that they take care of each other. They all want to take care of each other. And when I first raised our first round, I was scared to death. I mean, it was like the day before Ranger School going in, I'm just shaking. Like that's kind of how it felt. And I talked to over 100 investors in a matter of like 6 months. And every single one of them was awesome. And when they would say no, they would always say, it's just not an investment thesis, they don't invest in defense or whatever. And then they would give me names of 3 other VCs that actually was on. And so the network of investors was, they weren't cutthroat. It wasn't like Shark Tank. It wasn't Donald Trump or back in his days of firing people on the plane. It wasn't anything like that. They weren't, get out of my office. They were all like, come tell me your story. And how can I help you? And so I think you just got to be vulnerable a little bit and step out into that. As far as like the incubators and stuff, look, I've never been through one. I've known a lot of companies who come through them, but I don't know which one. They're amazing ones out there, and I've heard awesome success stories from all of them. So thank you for what you do.
I'll speak to incubators briefly, having had to build a few of them. Happy to answer questions about Bunker Labs programming through IVMF, which offers guidance, veterans, and residents. Jeremy was a graduate of that as well. So I'm happy to speak, Raj, obviously, with you and anyone about those programs. But I'd say Brandon brought it back to one of the reasons why you're likely here today. You're here to make connections. You're here to ask questions. Raj, now that I know, I'm going to connect you with all the work I do at spaceports, which are airports, okay? And my connections at the USO, who host lounges at airports. That is the whole base of their business. And that's why you come, guys. And that's why you speak up. So if you have been marinating on something, I've used that word twice now. If you have been struggling or contemplating, this is why you come to an intimate meetup where you have a chance to really connect. And it's one of the reasons that we were intentional about making this authentic. Sharing leadership stories, asking people to be vulnerable in front of you, modeling that, so that you can take that away and do it with each other. Because no amount of sitting through an incubator or a university class, and I say this as someone who's done both, is going to give you the relationships you will make. So, that might be my hot take. But, anyone else who'd like to share and who would like to reflect? And then we'll turn it over so you all can network with each other.
This is a sleeper right here.
Yeah.
Never shows up.
I don't have a good story. I'm just Jeremy's wife. So we have teenage boys. They will listen. Mine will listen to me. Yours probably doesn't listen to you. But maybe if I say Brady's dad said, and tell my son, what's some good advice that you have for our kids since they're young and they have so much opportunity? I feel like they started now.
on something. Like, he would just take the world in, a few short years. So if you had any advice about being successful, productive humans, that I could say, Brady's dad told me this.
This is the easiest question in the world.
Yay.
Wow. So we actually employ quite a few high schoolers in our company. Interns who come in and do part-time work, and I'm constantly impressed with, one, their thoughtfulness, where I thought all teenagers were completely self-centered and self-oriented, because most of the ones I've known now are.
That's not my son.
No. I'm impressed with their thoughtfulness. I'm impressed with their attitude of hard work, which, people always talk about that generation or this generation, right? My parents thought we were the latest generation, their parents thought they were. And so I don't really put a whole lot of stock in that, but to constantly be renewed by looking out into our workforce and seeing high schoolers who are coming here after their day at school and working for 2 or 3 hours or whatever, it's impressive. But I think, to your point, I think one of the things that they're seeing, I don't know if this is exactly the way I would have thought about it as you asked the question that way, but they're seeing it modeled by their older, post-college adults that are around them. And so I think anything we can do to get them surrounded by adults who are experiencing adulting, the real world, whatever you call it, they're going to model it, and they're going to see that. And so I actually look at my own son and think, we've talked about him starting his own business, doing some, lawn care, whatever, and I'm wondering, just even right now, as we're talking about, maybe that's the wrong play right now. Maybe he can do that someday later in the future after maybe he just needs to go see some people work hard and be surrounded by it. That's what I'm seeing with the folks that we hire right now, is they're turning into
Full circle, your first comment, looking towards a mentorship.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, it's definitely a theme.
Modeling and mentorship. I like it. Well, guys, let's give a big round of applause to Brandon. And Brandon will be available to answer questions. So we do have a hard out at 8 p.m. So just want to set expectations there. If you hear me pushing on you, that's not because I don't love you. But everyone, please stay, chat. That's why we're here.
Thanks, Sean.
No, we didn't license our founders on the we have a showdown program, so we have to identify three. And when Brandon made the introduction about, hey, we're the industry leader in this space, it's not just a marketing phrase that we gave ourselves. It's that we have been doing this for a while for the world's most elite fighter training.
All right, next question. You said that you're only not working on the Afghanistan
Yeah, we like to say we don't care what the target is, we'll find a way to hide it, and so the target is sometimes different things that it takes a different, we call it a toolkit to sort of apply technology to, and we've got like a technology base in the area. And I didn't say we're not working on adapters, we're not fielding an adapter. So we are working on R&D for the next.
You said you don't have a single R&D.
I don't think so. If I did, no, we have so we've got an R&D team in the U.S. We've got an R&D team in Europe. I said our PhDs who are doing the basic research are not full-time. Slide research is kind of where we pick it up. We don't manufacture materials. We source materials that we manufacture. We're not making materials. We are not a material producer. We're a product company. Oftentimes they're not novel materials, we're taking off the shelf materials and we do have material scientists because I think you need to understand microstructures. Oh yeah, native. Yeah, we had an airfile trade in 2019. It's not a secret, but we do multispectral. We are. It's an R&D. The way those sensors detect things, right? No, not right now. It's an R&D. So let's just say this, there's nothing that's ready to field that will be ready. I'm widely aware of all of industry and academia. I mean, you're not fielding something for that yet. It's a big problem, big hard problem. And to your point, we need to be at least hybrid adaptive, if not fully adaptive. Moving in that direction. Yeah, I mean, we've traveled the world, like I'm very aware of everyone that works in this space, with the exception of, there's 2 engineers in a garage who have a great idea. Like, I don't know about them yet, but we know about serious players in this domain. I don't know him. I think one of our senior scientists. You're asking a lot of questions. Like, you're making me wonder if you're either a business intelligence spy or I know what it is, but we're not part of it. Some of what he's done. I don't know what he's doing. I'll say we know some of what he's done. Well, if you get really curious, come on up to Round Rock. I know it's far. But always happy to host you. And if you're professionally curious, like, we are very into the deception. Right? So there's this whole camouflage concealment deception and so a good time to start a plant a tree is next best time. think you're like much more like basic research level. It's like $61, $62. Academia, novel materials, novel. I mean, like our AFRL engagement has been to actual building widgets for your. Oh, we know GIE well. Yeah, we don't have any contracts with them right now, but we've been So we have like a proxy board that sits between the U.S. company and the Israel company because we do have the classified we are separate, distinctly separate for reasons of national security. So our proxy board are 3 Americans, Peter Marino, Steve Lane, and United States. 2 of which are professional proxy board members, and 1 is like an entrepreneur. He was a Marine and started with me, so. TTO?
Oh, I only know TTO.
It was Scott can come now. We're looking for talent all the time, right? So you find talent, that's all we do. Whether or not we have an open requisition, that's all we have. Reach out. You have my card? Like I said, if you ever really curious, just come on up and see.
Mario, are you the guy that was doing the drone disaster?
No, we met at the Lincoln plant. Yes. I'm sorry? Yeah, my wife is there, that's right, we had lunch together.
It's the first time he came through. Oh yeah, it'll be our first Navy person and enlisted. I'll let you guys. That's why I called you. Double whammo.
Yeah, I'm wondering we had that one yourself.
I've been trying to.
How are you doing?
I wanted to get Scott here. I know he has a higher senior position. I don't know if he's going to be good or not, but maybe 12. And that's all the Navy people I know down here. That's right. Yeah. You can rule the world this way. So this is 36. This is it.
right now I'm a separator attached, but my co-founder and I
Joseph already left? Yeah, he stuck out almost before the ago.
Work out for me. There's permanent bumps on my head. Because I read how